Hello students, so in this module we'll be studying about the pteridophytes. Fine. Now the pteridophytes include horsetails and ferns, and the first terrestrial plant to possess vascular tissue like xylem and phloem. We all know what is the function of xylem: to conduct the water and phloem to conduct the food. Students, the pteridophytes are found in cool, damp, shady places, though some may nourish well in sandy soil conditions also. Now we should know what are its structure, how exactly the plant body is. So the main plant body is a sporophyte, fine, which is differentiated into true root, stem and leaves. These organs possess well differentiated vascular tissue, and the leaves are small and they form a bundle kind of thing. They are small, so they are known as microphylls. Selaginella or large macrophylls, fine. For example, the ferns. The microphylls example is Selaginella, students, and macrophylls example is ferns, fine. So they are having the large leaves. Now the sporophytes bear sporangia that are subtended by leaf-like appendages called sporophylls. In some cases, sporophylls may form distinct compact structure that is called strobili or cones. Fine. For example, Equisetum and Selaginella. Now students, talking about their life cycle, the sporangia produce spores. Fine. And how? By the process of meiosis. Fine. In spore mother cells. So we are having spore mother cells. In these spore mother cells, what happens? Sporangia produce spores by the process of this division that is known as meiosis. And the spores that are being produced, they germinate to give rise to inconspicuous, small but multicellular, free-living, mostly photosynthetic thalloid gametophyte. It is called prothallus. So the gametophyte that is being formed here is prothallus. And these gametophytes, they require cool, damp, shady places to grow. Fine. Because of this specific restricted requirement and the need for water for fertilization, the spread of living pteridophytes is limited and restricted to narrow geographical region only. Now, how does they reproduce sexually? See, the sexual reproduction takes place inside these pteridophytes in such a manner like the gametophytes bear male and female sex organ that is called the antheridia and archegonia respectively. Now, water is required for the transfer of antherozoid, students. Antherozoids they basically are the male gametes to the mouth of archegonia, which is the female gamete. So we know that there should be fusion between these male and female gametes. So fusion of male gamete with the egg that is present inside the archegonium, it results into the formation of a structure that is known as zygote. Now what happens? The zygote has been formed from the fusion of antherozoid and this archegonium. So zygote thereafter produce a multicellular, well differentiated sporophyte with the dominant face of the pteridophyte, and this is how the complete cycle keeps on repeating. Now students, there are two types of sporophytes in pteridophytes. Like we have homosporous, in which all spores that are produced, they are of similar kind. Fine. Example in majority of pteridophytes. Second we have is the heterosporous. Fine. So in heterosporous, what happens? Two types of spores are produced. We know hetero means different. Fine. So one is small and male microspore, and another one we have is the large female megaspore. Fine. Example in case of Selaginella, and the megaspore and microscope, they germinate and give rise to female and male gametophyte respectively. Now the female gametophyte in these plants, they are retained on the parent sporophyte for variable periods, and the development of the zygotes into young embryos takes place within the female gametophyte only. Fine. So the development, that zygote has been formed, students, its development has to be done into young embryo, and that takes place within the female gametophyte only. Fine. And this event is a precursor to the seed habit, considered an important step in evolution. Now we should know what are their economical use. Fine. So pteridophytes, they are used for medicinal purposes such and as soil binders also. Fine. They are very good soil binders, and they are also frequently grown as ornamental, for ornamental purpose, like And the pteridophytes are further classified into 4 classes, students. Like we have Psilopsida. Fine. Example is Psilotum. Then we have Lycopsida. Example is Selaginella or Lycopodium. Then we have Sphenopsida. The example is Equisetum. And we have Pteropsida. The example is Drapteris, Teris or Edientum. Fine. These are the examples. So you can see here, students. Equisetum. Fine. These are the basically the pictures had been shown of these pteridophytes to you. Fine. Now talking about the next, that one we have is the Gymnosperms. Now plants in which the ovules are not enclosed by any ovary wall and they remain exposed, fine, both before and after fertilization. Like you must have seen the Pinus, Cycas seeds, fine. So the seeds that develop post fertilization are not covered. They are naked basically. Now talking about their plant body and structure, students. So Gymnosperms include medium sized tree or tall trees and shrubs. One of the gymnosperm, the giant redwood tree, Sequoia, is one of the tallest tree species. Talking about their roots, the roots are generally tap roots and roots in Pinus have fungal association. In Cycas, small specialized roots called Caroloid roots are associated with nitrogen fixing cyanobacteria. Fine, so this is basically an association. Talking about their stem, so in case of Cycas it is unbranched and in case of Pinus or Cedrus it is branched. Now talking about their leaves. So the leaves may be simple or compound. You must have studied the simple compound leaves in your class 11, students. And in Cycas the pinnate leaves persist for a few years. Fine. So in our next chapter, students, in our class 11th, we will be studying what exactly the meaning of simple leaves, compound leaves, pinnate leaves and all such leaves. The leaves in Gymnosperms are well adapted to withstand extreme of temperature, humidity and wind. And in conifers, it is also Gymnosperm, students, the needle-like leaves reduces the surface area. Fine. So needle-like leaves, they are present and reduces the surface area. Fine. So transpiration would be less. There will be reduced water lost. Now their thick cuticle and sunken stomata also helps to reduce water loss. Students, talking about their development of spores and gametophyte. So the Gymnosperms, they are basically they produce haploid microspores and megaspores. Fine, the male and female gametes, and spores are produced within sporangia. So sporangia is a structure and these sporangia, they are borne on sporophylls, leaf-like structure. Within there it is a sporangia, and within the sporangia the spores are produced through meiosis division, which are arranged spirally along an axis to form a compact strobili or cones. You might have seen the Pinus cones. Fine. Now talking about the male, the strobili bearing microsporophyll, they are called male strobili. Fine. And the microspores, they develop into the male gametophytic generation, which is highly reduced and is coned to only a limited number of cells. And this reduced male gametophyte is called a pollen grain. So that reduced male gametophyte is said to be the pollen grain. Talking about the female, students, the cones bearing megasporophyll. So microsporophyll was the male and megasporophyll with ovule or megasporangium, they are called female strobili. Fine. Now the megaspore mother cell is this megaspore mother cell, students, is differentiated from one cell of the cells of the nucellus. Nucellus is basically the part of the ovule, student, and this nucellus is protected by envelope. Fine. And the composite structure is called an ovule. So within this ovary there is an ovule, student. You might have studied the double fertilization, fine, in case of the flowering plants. Now the megaspore mother cell that is present, it divide means with the help of meiosis division. Fine. So it basically divides with the help of meiotic process to form the 4 megaspores. So their meiotic division takes place, students. फाइन, मियोटिकली ये डिवाइड होते हैं 4 मेगास्पोर्स फॉर्म करने के लिए, where what happens, one of the megaspore enclosed within the megasporangium, that is the nucellus, it develops into a multicellular female gametophyte that bears 2 or more archegonia or female sex organs. Fine. So one of the megaspore, student, that is enclosed within the megasporangium. Megasporangium is that female gametophyte only, student. So it develops a complete structure that is known as female gametophyte that bears the female sex organs. And the multicellular female gametophyte is also retained within that megasporangium. Fine. And the male or female cones, or we can say the strobili, may be born on the same tree. So they may be bisexual monoecious, for example pinus, or on different trees unisexual dioecious, for example cycas. Now in gymnosperms, the male and the female gametophyte do not have an independent free living existence, students. They remain within the sporangia, retained on the sporophytes. So they may be pollinated by air. The pollen grains develops pollen tube, students, on opening of ovule to carry the male gamete towards archegonia in ovule. This is the same procedure, student, that you have studied in your class 10. Fine. The pollen grains, they germinate, pollen tube germinate, then pollen tube consists of male gametes. It goes to that ovule, into the ovule, fine, through that pollen tube, and it fuses up with the female gamete. That results into the fertilization. Zygote has been formed, student. It undergoes various division to form the embryo and the ovules into seeds. So these seeds are not covered in case of gymnosperms. Only this difference is there. So you can see here, student, this one is cycas, this one is pinus, fine, ginkgo. So it was all about gymnosperm. Thank you, students.